Canine Detection Collaborative. We bring the conversation straight to you. Training tips and helpful hints you'll actually use. Real insights from real experts with a side of laughs. Canine Detection Collaborative is where it's at. It all comes down to just one thing, helping our dogs be the best they can be. Canine Detection Collaborative.
Hi, everybody. My name is Robin Greubel, and welcome back to the Canine Detection Collaborative. We are super excited. First, I have Stacy Barnett here.
Hello.
And we have Dr. Jennifer Essler on the podcast with us today. Dr. Essler, why don't you just give us what do you do?
Right now, I'm an assistant professor and the associate chair for the Canine Training and Management Program, SUNY Cobleskill. So it's if you're in a state that has like a state school system, but like little outshoot kind of universities or colleges, I'm at the Cobleskill one of SUNY.
It was really interesting because I used to work in like Iowa State. Mm-hmm. And so Cobleskill and SUNY it's more of like in Iowa. Do you guys still have community colleges, or is that what's Cobleskill? How's it fit in? It's a 4-year program.
It is, but the college did start as a 2-year.
Okay.
Has not always had 4-year degrees.
Okay.
The history of the college. I certainly was not here when it was 2-year degrees, but in the whole history of the college, it did start, I believe, with just 2-year degrees.
Can I put in a fun fact here?
Yeah.
Well, it's a personal fun fact. My very first NW3 trial was held at Cobleskill.
Oh, that's interesting. When was that?
It was a long time ago. And and actually Doc was one of the judges.
Yeah.
That's when I'm talking about, like, I also have memories there, even though they have really nothing to do with the canine program. Just a little fun fact. I had to just put it out there because it was a happy memory. So
yeah, we just hosted a summit trials in May. So that was my first experience with NACSW, and it was a lot.
I heard it was a great trial. So anyway, sorry. I took us I already did a tangent and we haven't even started yet. That's amazing.
Well, and for our listeners, you got a little bit of This is Cobbleskill's program because we interviewed Caitlin Graham from Catalyst Kennels, who has gone through that program. So, okay, you said you didn't get your PhD there because they don't have a PhD program. Where'd you go how did you get to where you are?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's try and do the short version because I definitely did not start with dogs. I didn't even start with canids. So I first went to college for music, realized I did not like music. I took so many music classes. And I was very lucky to have a scholarship that allowed me to work for some professor for 10 hours a week. And I was just looking through and I was like, oh, this professor works with monkeys. That's kind of cool. I'll do that. And so I spent 2 semesters in a lab with no windows on, I think, the 7th floor of the psych building, coding videos of Capuchin monkeys. And so this was with Dr. Sarah Brosnan at Georgia State.
Were the Capuchin monkeys doing something in particular?
Yes. So she was working on the study that I was coding was actually a study looking at whether giving them intranasal oxytocin caused them to basically collaborate or cooperate better. So there was a bar pull was given oxytocin or both were given oxytocin and then looking at their bar pulling behavior. If you've seen the video of the researcher that is giving one monkey cucumber and one monkey grapes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's Brosnan. So she does the Inequity, Aversion, and cooperation stuff. And Franz Deval was her, what is the word? Her PI, So I did that. And then I worked actually in person there with the monkeys. So, I got the thanks for paying your dues. You can actually come work with the monkeys. I wasn't even going to go to college. So the idea of continuing education after college didn't hit me until I got there. And I was like, well, what do I do now? I guess I'll just keep studying monkeys somewhere. So then I went to Bucknell, which is in Pennsylvania. And they also had capuchin monkeys, squirrel monkeys, Hamadryas baboons, and some lion-tailed macaques, which is really impressive for this school, like truly in the middle of nowhere.
Has all of those different types of
did at the
monkeys.
time,
Wow.
right? 2011. I don't know exactly what they have now, but yeah, which is an amazing opportunity for those students, right? And then again, I got to the end of that and I was like, gosh, what do I do now? I guess I'll just keep going to school. And I was kind of at the point in my career where I wasn't sure if I really liked researching primates or I really liked researching like behavior and cognition. And Sarah Brosnan actually sent me a application or a job that was posted for a PhD position in Vienna, in Austria. And I was like,
dude, fun.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll apply. And it wasn't with primates, it was with wolves and dogs, but it was in inequity aversion. So it was in fairness, cooperation, kind of the same. So the same question, different species. And I applied thinking there's no way. I've never worked with wolves. My dog was the dog that I stupidly got at 19 when I first went to college. Nobody should do, right?
Right.
My experience with canids, but I got it. And my dad was like, you have to go. Like, there's no choice. Like, a life experience, you have to go. And so I went there. That was the Vet Med Uni in Vienna. The Wolf Science Center is the research lab. And I was working under Federico Range, who is still at that university. And so I was there for about 4 years doing my PhD on inequity aversion, which in humans we would say is fairness. But as you probably know, we don't like to attribute, human things to animals. So we give them a different, less kind of term. And so we call it inequity aversion in them.
I was going to ask you, I was like, I'm trying to think about this. I'm like, these terms are big.
Yeah. So when I tell people I studied inequity aversion, I'm like, it's fairness.
Yeah.
But no one wants to hear that, right?
Right.
Because there's kind of like ethics, moral behind it that, people don't want to accept that animals have. So yeah, I was there for 4 years studying wolves and dogs. The very cool thing that they have there is that they have this research lab, the Wolf Science Center, like I said, where they actually hand raise the wolves and the dogs in the same way. So there's packs of wolves that live together, packs of dogs that live together. And so when you study them, you can kind of take out like the life experience part, right? Because if you studied wolves and pet dogs, there's the domestication difference, but also the lifestyle difference.
Right.
And so this lab was kind of uniquely set up to try and take that away from it, which was very, very cool.
Okay, so I have another rabbit hole. So
we're good at that.
Yeah, we're good at that. I know that they have seen in domesticated foxes where the domestication tends to change their coat color.
Yeah.
Is that true in wolves too?
Well, I guess I'm not sure the question. So we haven't actually tried, they don't try to domesticate wolves there. So they actually
so it's not like the Siberian fox.
No.
Okay.
So when I was there, we actually got some from Canada and Russia that got brought in and started getting hand raisers. So they don't raise them there. And even the beginning of the dogs there were actually from street dogs in Hungary because they didn't want any like breed effects, basically. They didn't get away from this kind of human lifestyle thing that makes it really difficult to actually look at domestication. Though interestingly, dogs are harder to keep in packs than wolves when humans aren't there. So they did actually breed some of the dogs to cooperative working breeds, kind of.
Okay. And would they get in fights or what would they do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you can probably imagine, the human influence on dogs has made them less good at navigating their social relationships compared to animals that haven't had that. We certainly had fights within like wolves, right? But in the dogs, it was much more traumatic and kind of, if anyone had to come out and get a surgery or anything, you couldn't just like put them back in, like for safety reasons, for healing reasons. And they just don't do as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is this the same place that, I remember hearing about a study where they were studying the cooperative capabilities of dogs versus wolves.
Mhm.
And they had the wolves like freaking out how like they were pulling ropes and they'd pull them together.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So that was
watching that going, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So what I was doing there was a few studies. I did use a bar pull for a few studies, but the main study that I did was looking at, so in dogs, the way that has inequity, aversion, or fairness has been tested is with like giving paw. So you ask for paw, you reward, or you don't, and then you change whether they're the partner they're getting rewarded. We tried that in the wolves. We put like a fence between them, and it was just immediately not safe because they get really mad, if I can put a human term to it. And so we had to come up with like a different way. And so we actually had to like cut a part of the fence out, put stronger fencing in, and then we found these little buzzers to have them push. And so we'd push in a buzzer and they'd push it or not. We'd pull it out and then we'd give them food. So there was like no direct contact at all with the experimenter. Yeah. That was a really core memory of mine, trying to find all of the materials for that. When with dogs, you can just bring a bowl of kibble in and, tie their leash to the wall. And not that they never had discussions about it, but we did it one time with the wolves. We're like, this is not safe.
This is not going to work well.
Yeah. yeah. So we did it with complete fencing around everyone. I still ended up having my apparatus broken a few times by wolves, so it wasn't perfect. But then I did my postdoc working with working dogs. And so I just continued working with candidates that kept breaking everything I gave them. So,
so you went from studying wolves and dogs in the cooperative, and then you did working dogs. What did you do with working dogs?
So I did my postdoc. It was the job I had before this at the Penn Vet Working Dog Center with Cindy Otto. So I was there from 2017 until just before I got here. So end of 2021. So 4 years, good chunk of time.
What did you do for your postdoc?
Oh my gosh, I did a whole bunch of things. So when I started there was no postdoc at the time. There was kind of a break between the two postdocs. And so I came into almost, I don't want to say I was like restarting a lab, but I wasn't like directly taking over from like one person. Interestingly, when I came there, I can't remember like which event it was, but the training manager who had been doing a lot of research got deployed with her dog like that week. And the training director was also somewhere with her like family or something. And so actually the week I started was like, it was overwhelming, actually, completely overwhelming. And then it was also their 5-year anniversary. So it was like prepping for all of this. And I remember feeling so remarkably out of my element. Bob Doherty was doing decoying practices, basically apprehension with some of their dogs. And I saw it and I was like, I'm never working with that dog. That's terrifying. And I remember, oh, you worked with wolves. That's, I was like,
yes, behind fences.
Yeah. Well, we could walk them on leashes, not me, the trainers did. And so we did have direct contact, but they don't run at people and grab them like on purpose. Like, that's very different. And it was a dog. His name was Max, a black German Shepherd. And he was amazing, super social, no problem. It was just, that first week I was like, what am I doing? I don't.
Right. This is not my thing.
Really different than working with primates and wolves, like behind fences and very controlled. So when I started there, the main like lab project that was going on was training and testing a few dogs to find ovarian cancer in blood plasma samples alongside a series of kind of behavior battery tests on like incoming puppies and things like that. It's a much smaller scale than some places, 20 to 30 dogs at a time. So it wasn't like it wasn't like Auburn where you're testing like tens and hundreds of puppies.
So what batteries, like, what'd you do with the puppies? Were you trying to determine what job would be good for them or?
Yeah, well, yes and no. So my like pet project or my mental hope pet project has always been to take what you guys as professionals see in dogs and your ability to like pretty accurately assess them and like write it down and put it into numbers and words. And Kai Narolu, who was the training manager when I was there, was amazing, tons of experience, and so are really good at, assessing these young dogs, as many of you are. And then some of it's like this je ne sais quoi, like I can't put my finger on why this dog is good, but it's a good dog. And so the tests were very basic ones that you can probably imagine, things like hunt tests in field, an umbrella opens in front of them, unstable surfaces, the really basic ones that everybody tries to expose their dog to anyway, in the working dog world, and then trying to kind of track that to careers, because the working dog center doesn't train for just one career. They kind of put them all on one curriculum and then they branch off, right? So it's not like if they don't go SAR, then they're done. They could go single purpose.
Right.
So it was kind of like a second level. It's like, are they working dog material or not? It was like, which type of working dog material are they? But of course, it's hard when you're working with such small numbers. And as you probably can imagine, when you have this selected population of dogs that isn't regularly going to have these traits you don't want, you kind of hit this ceiling of like, every dog looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Right.
Statistically speaking, looking at that is pretty tough. And then I was bringing in some research from different areas. So like the impossible task was one we started looking at.
Okay. So what's the impossible task?
Okay. Yeah. So the impossible task is putting a toy or food inside of some box to look at things like, how long will they work to get at it? What behaviors will they do to get at it? Will they look at the experimenter? Will they look at their trainer? And my first hurdle was, how do I make one of these that a Dutch Shepherd isn't going to break? Because we did have like this Tupperware, and then Hawk walked in and immediately broke it. I was like, okay.
Valid.
Plenty of Labradors break this thing. And so I actually ended up having one made by Sarah Kane, who's now a postdoc with Nathan Hall. She was one of my research assistants there. Her dad created one for us, like carpentry style, like completely flat. There was no like teeth that could get into it, but it also was like heavy. I want to say this thing was like easily 40, 50 pounds. So they couldn't knock it around. It was like this monster of an impossible box. So for that, I was looking at persistence. But for me, I think the nuance of some of those tests is not just persistence, but like trying different things, right? So like we had one dog that just barked at it for 5 minutes.
That would be Nico.
That would actually be prize.
Persistence you want, right? Like if it's not working, you also want a dog that's going to try different things, right? So you want this behavioral persistence, but also flexibility to realize
that's not going to work.
Yeah. So we integrated some different things like that. And I actually ended up taking the apparatus all the way to the fall ball.
Oh, yeah.
In Kansas?
Kansas.
Right?
Yep. At Salina, Kansas.
Yep. And testing some dogs from that. And it also didn't break there. So good job, Sarah Kane's dad, making an amazing apparatus.
Wow.
Ever shipped it across over there. Yeah. So that was kind of what the flavor, so to speak, that I was bringing to that position. And then through the time there, we looked at some spotted lanternfly detection, which when we started wasn't in Philly. And by the time we ended, it was. So we don't know what spotted lanternflies are. They're an invasive pest. We did COVID work. Obviously, when COVID shut everyone down, the first thing was, can dogs find it? So we did a study in collaboration with Pat Nolan, because we weren't allowed to go to campus to have dogs. So he acquired dogs. And we looked at dogs detecting that. Gosh, probably a million other studies. We worked on a working dog CBARC with James Serpell that came out, because if you've ever done a CBARC for your working dog, you're probably like, some of these are not relevant. And you're also missing a whole lot of things that I really want to know. So we looked at that too. Kind of a jack of all trades there. And now they have more postdocs, more research assistants. It's a much more robust lab, but it was very different when I started there, for sure. It's grown quite a lot.
Well, that was 5 years in, and now, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what interested you about going to Cobleskill?
So I think part of it, and every semester I take the students back to the Working Dog Center and they're like, oh my gosh, why did you leave this place? It was amazing. And that's true. It's amazing. But postdocs are never permanent. never meant to be permanent as much as it would have been amazing to stay. And I loved working with the working dogs. I did always probably, once I really got entrenched in academia, the eventual, you just end up being a professor. Like that's just kind of like where you end up. And to what extent you teach versus research is kind of what varies more so than some other jobs. So I had never heard of Cobleskill. I also didn't know Doc McKenzie, who was the original kind of starter of this program here. I just saw it online and I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy to have a degree in that, a program in that. And I also have one very separation anxiety / reactive dog. And so I was like, yeah, Philly is probably not going to work forever. Maybe the middle of nowhere is better for our lifestyle. And so I applied I had actually been applying for tenure track positions for a couple of years. And that's like very typical for it to just take forever. And yeah, I think part of it was being able to go somewhere kind of early again and help them flesh that out. And some of the things that I wanted to teach, like the detection class that I teach, didn't exist here. Not that the students were interested. And obviously Kate did it separately with Doc, but it wasn't like a class that's offered. And so I think a lot of the things that I was interested in doing, they also were interested in having. And so it was kind of just a good fit. And they also needed an academic. A lot of the people that work here are amazing, amazing trainers, but on the academic side, not their expertise. We always make jokes about rubrics and things like that they're not in love with doing, because that's really the academic side of how do I assess someone's handling with numbers and and I'm like, you have to give them a grade. That's how it works here. And it's very, very difficult. And so hats off to them for getting there. But, part of it was the college did need someone to help with the academic side, with the curriculum side and all of that. So I can't say it was my dream to come here. I had never heard of it here.
But you're getting to build a program now.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And sometimes we just end up where we should be.
Yeah.
It may not be something that we...
Here, there were a lot of...
Yeah.
What kind of classes are you teaching at Cobleskill?
Me or just in everyone?
Well, let's start... You first.
Yeah.
Okay. So I teach it's called canine detection. And I think the hardest thing for me is sometimes coming up with names, because canine detection is so incredibly broad. But I teach the lecture side. So almost all of our canine classes are 2 hours lecture and then 2 hours of lab, because we do have a 44 dog kennel on campus. So students do get to work with a range of dogs, not necessarily working dogs, but a range of dogs. So I teach the detection class, which goes through basics. I don't focus as much on handling, because they learn a lot of that in the lab side, but basics of odor theory, some basics of differences in types of odors you might have, basics of training, reinforcement schedules like we were talking about, even containment, how do you keep things clean? What does it mean to off-gas things? All of those things that I don't want to say, kind of ride that line between chemistry and dog stuff, but you need to be able to apply it, because I'm certainly not a chemist. So I'm also in the middle there. So I give the students that side of it, and then they apply that in the lab. And I have taught the lab before, but I do have some experience from Penn doing basic imprinting and room searching and basic stuff. And for the spotted lanternfly study, I did handle my own dog. And then for the COVID study, I handled 2 dogs. So certainly not as much as many in the field, but enough to give very new students kind of an intro of the basics. And then I also teach domestic animal behavior class, which is basic animal behavior plus some specifics on domestic animals. And that exists on campus, not just for canine students. A lot of the students that come to campus are animal science majors, some pre-vet, but we have a farm on campus, cows and everything. So that class is half canine, half everyone else. And so half of them would probably complain that many of my examples are dogs, but I do eventually talk about other animals, pigs, sheep, all of that. And then I also teach animal cognition. I teach that. No, that one doesn't have a hands-on portion. It's just lecture. And then every summer I teach a primatology course just to keep that in my bag.
In your repertoire?
Yeah. Yeah. Because some of our students, they want to go into vets, not canine students, but the students on campus, if they want to go into vet school, some of them are interested in like exotic species and things like that. And so those are usually the students that take it more so than like canine students.
Okay.
Canine students too.
I always, as an instructor, you always have that like one lesson or something that you present to the students. And it's like, they're like, oh, really? We didn't know that. Right? What's one of those lessons?
Yeah.
Oh boy. I think this is one of those things where if you had not asked me like on a podcast, I would be like, here's a million of them. And now I'm like,
I can't think of it. You know what? And you can percolate on that one.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I think one of the really surprising ones for them is learning about some of the specifics for human remains work, because not only is that interesting, but it's something they've really never had experience in. So like one of them that they're always really interested in learning about is body farms. Like they just think this is the coolest thing ever that they've never heard of. They always have questions on like how are dogs so good at generalizing this odor that is changing minute to minute,
all of the time. Yeah.
Long periods of time. And it's one of the times I have to be like, dogs are very good and we're still studying why kind of thing. I think that's one of the big ones in the detection class. I do one thing in class. And if you're a future student of mine, turn this off for a couple minutes because I don't want to tell you what it is. But I use Germ. If you guys have ever heard of it, it's like a powder that you can barely see, but it shows under black light. And so I have them, I don't tell them, but I have them practice setting out hides. And then I check how they did with this black light. And so we talk about really basic things like they'll like leave their sweater down and they'll get it like on the edge of their sweater, or they'll forget to use a barrier. And I'm like, yeah, that's why you have to use barriers. I'm like, well, we didn't see the powder. And I'm like,
that's because
that's how it works.
Fascinating. Well,
wow. So it's like a discussion around contamination. Is that kind of...
Yeah.
Okay.
Contamination, right? So we talk about like primary, intermediate barriers and containers and things like that. And of course, we talk about should you use plastic versus metal. But when you talk about like setting it out for your dog and then putting it away, just realizing how actually difficult it is and how much you have to be careful. Like, you know, you put your gloves on, but if you take them off in a certain way, that stuff still gets everywhere, right? Or if you touch your shirt.
Okay. So what is this stuff called?
Germ, GLO-GERM. So you can get it in like a liquid or powder. They use it. The only time I've seen it used.
Robin's writing
I'm writing it down, right? Because I'm like,
I'm going to so do this.
Welcome to intentional handling and hide setting 2.
Ooh, I'm seeing, I love that. Oh my God.
Yeah,
I love that. So I'm seeing all the gears turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. I put couscous in a plastic bag, shake it up with the powder, put it in a Tupperware. And then I'm like, here's your intermediate container. Here's your primary. Now go put it out somewhere. And they have to practice, but they don't know that it's got Germ on it. And then I go behind and I'm like, let's see how good you did. And they're like, oh my God, we didn't know. And it's so fun. That's a fun one. So I only knew about Germ because we did a study at Penn looking at the potential transfer of narcotics / anything when like bringing a dog back from like an overdose. So basically it was like how get on you from intramuscular versus intranasal naloxone. So that's where we had used it, right? Put it all over the dog, have people give these things to the dog and look at their how much they got on them. So that's where I had heard of it. I think a lot of places use it to practice like good hand washing skills, like for elementary school kids. I think that's probably the most common. But yeah, I kind of co-opted it for what I do.
Well, and I was just thinking about I was out speaking at the local high school today and was running flash on her training aids, which were get sent tubes, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't use barriers. Of course, they're get sent tubes, but still. And she was working on water. So I have get sent tubes inundated with chlorine and fluoride, basically. Set those out. And I'm like, oh yeah, I was more worried about getting my odor on the get sent tubes than what the get sent tubes were. And we were in a science lab. So it was clean. Yeah. Clean-ish, given the fact that I put them in the dirt. So
are those meant to be kind of used everywhere, right? I mean,
Yeah.
not get sent tubes, but you put them in the environment, so there's some expectation that they're already impregnated.
Well, they're already impregnated. I mean, I impregnated them for a week, actually more like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's, it's just kind of one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So,
We have those discussions too, right? I always have to explain in the spring, we have a faculty member that's leaving. So in the spring, I'm going to teach the lab, but normally it's run by a practitioner, not an academic. So oftentimes I'm like, here is what I would do.
Yeah.
And you leave here and go work for XYZ company or the police force or whatever, it will almost certainly be very different. And you have to learn to adapt and fall in line and make things better when you can, and just accept that. Because I'm like, I don't want you guys going out into the field and like, well, Dr. Essler said, and I'm like, that's these are best practices.
And there's another trend in nose work that I'm seeing a lot of the 3D printed hide vessels.
Yep.
And kind of like what you're talking about there, my brain kind of starts going to different types of hide vessels and things that I might see as potentially problematic, especially if you're talking get sent tubes. I mean, that's very controlled versus something that.
Well, I would think, I haven't used the 3D print ones. If you use them a lot, I would think there's a lot of plastic smell on that.
There's I think my understanding is that it's like 3D printed, they actually have a specific odor to them. So this is kind of where my brain went. I didn't know if you had any thoughts around that or.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I'm forgetting the name of the specific type of plastic, but I did see on Facebook once, in one of the many groups for nosework, someone was selling those, and I asked,
they're all over.
Make it with this kind of plastic, and they said no, but what they were putting it in was, so there's two things, right? Is it very low odor, or does it absorb odor, or does it give odor to your target, right? You're kind of talking about like three different things.
Yeah.
And so there are plastics that fall within, I would say, a reasonable use. But it's the same like in anything, right? If you're always putting it in metal, plastic, paper, eventually there's no reason to think that your dog isn't
associating that odor.
Right. You think you're trying one thing and the dog's getting something. The cool thing about those is because you can make them look like real life things, right? You're looking for boxes. But yeah, I think within the only nosework people I've really closely worked with were Summit. And so I think that would be like well within things that they would consider. But I do think it's something to think about, right? Not just on like nosework vessels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I guess where my head went was around when the dog is learning the odor.
Oh, yeah.
Right. To try to avoid that.
As pure
I
as
think
possible.
you do have some plastics that are low odor, but you'd have to reach out to the person that's 3D printing because they can purchase different types of plastic.
Gotcha.
That's really the issue. And probably the low odor ones are not the cheapest ones.
Okay.
Right.
Probably, you just need to make sure that you check what kind of plastic they're putting in there. Yeah.
So when you're teaching the students, what do you have like a hierarchy that you say, if you, the world is a wonderful place. What is the hierarchy for vessels?
Yeah.
That's so incredibly difficult because so we talk about it within the context of you have to manage multiple things, right? Because like, for example, when we were working on COVID, we used t-shirts. So we sent t-shirts out, people slept in them, brought them back. We put them in these mason jars, right? So glass and metal, which is like two of the, top things you should want because they give off less odor, they take less odor, and you can pretty aggressively clean them. But could an average person carry around these like quart size or even like small size glass? And then taking into account, they're also breakable. So do I really want to be moving them around? And so we don't really talk about it within the context of like, this is good for every situation. We kind of talk about it in the context of like, what is good for each situation. And then with the caveat that when they leave here, they probably won't get to choose it until later in their career anyway. For example, and I'm sorry if this is offensive, Stacy, but we purchased like a nosework kit where they put everything in one with like the little jars.
Yeah.
And made the entire thing just smelled like one.
Yeah, totally.
There was like one dropper for all of these vials.
Yep.
And so we talk about like not best practice.
That's not offensive to me at all. I'm going.
I never know about nosework people because I'm not in that field. And
Oh my
I don't
God.
wanna, step on toes.
No,
No,
I'm.
I ordered one for them because we were first using Birch with the dogs. We now use UDC.
Uh-huh.
And I had to talk about like, here's this thing I bought you that goes against like everything I told you about how we should store odors. So
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking about the little odor kit that I bought for nose work, and they sent all 3 odors in one little bag or one little tote thing. And now I'm like, I should probably go out and split all of them up and put each one in their own little Mylar bag.
yeah, so that's what we did. But I used the kit as like an example of like, this is where you might be leaning a little too much towards convenience and a little too far away from best practice. But also, if you're just a dog owner trying to have fun with your dog, also not really a concern, right?
Right.
So it's kind of a what works in each situation, and
Right.
approach it with understanding and kindness and not judgment of the person.
Right.
So that's kind of how we learn it. I'm trying to set them up to be understanding of all situations with the background knowledge of glass is better than a Ziploc bag.
I think that's really fair, by the way, especially when you start thinking about the application. And, my expertise is heavily hit in nosework, right? And there, a lot of it comes down to, does it work okay and well enough?
Yeah.
And when you are looking at kind of what are the downsides of it not being absolutely perfect, the downside is actually pretty minor versus other applications where the downside could actually be pretty major. And so I think you're right. It's like, it's what makes sense. And I don't think anybody would have any issues with that.
Yeah. I just, every field has their own like things, and I'd never want to overstep in a field.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, if that works for them, and that's great. It's a good example for the students where this works for this, but you want this in another application. You look at some of the ones sold online and it's very different. Ones that are really set for like in the field working dogs. And, we discuss why are they different and how could you improve it? And then you always have to talk about like cost, right? I could come up here and say like putting liquid in pads is great. Not everyone has $50 for every
spend that.
have,
Right.
So there's so many things to balance. And I love pads, again, not stepping on any foot. We use them, but you have to think about all those things, right? No one picks a plastic bag because they think it's the very best thing. There's a bunch of other reasons why those things might be chosen that we just don't know.
Right. Okay. So what's the most fun for you to teach in the behavior and cognition class?
Ooh,
besides the whole class, but
let's see. I think the most fun thing that I like to teach about both classes, which actually is relevant to both, is having students understand that everything animals do is selected for by their environment. And so you can say, yes, this animal has, this is very like, oh, it has higher levels of cognition, which means literally nothing. But as humans, we know what we're talking about. We're like more intelligent, whatever. But just like any other skill, animals only evolve these behaviors or these cognitive capabilities if it benefited them, right? Especially because brains are super like expensive to run.
For some of us anyway.
Well, that makes me, I'm like, well, that
maybe
would
PhDs,
explain
like
all of my food to make my
expensive.
brain run. It's expensive. And I'm storing I have additional stores to make my brain run.
I'm on sale over here. I'm definitely on sale. Lately today anyway. Today I feel on sale.
It's one of those things where, no one would say like humans are losing out on something or lesser because they can't fly, right? Where it hasn't, it didn't evolve for XYZ reason. And that's like, again, very like flippant way of explaining it, but it's like any other skill. We talk about these abilities in animals and learning that certain behaviors and also these really cool cognitive abilities are all on the same like evolutionary pressures. Like it only happens if it benefits the animal. And so it's not really helpful to compare them without considering the environmental context in which those animals evolved, right?
Going back to the dog and wolf thing and how you were talking about like a lot of how the differences in the dogs versus the wolves.
Mhm.
Is it kind of like along those lines of like, once the dogs had domestication and they were allowed to, they could rely on humans, that some of these other
Traits
capabilities or traits or whatever may have
disappeared?
Yeah.
Yes, so domestication is a little bit more, it's a different question, right? Because then you have artificial selection from humans, right? So the brachycephalic dogs would not have just existed on their own. So humans are selecting without consideration for anything except what humans want. And yes, of course, health and things like that. But it's still like, if I'm breeding a dog for health, that's me deciding that health is important, right?
Right.
And so a lot of the things that dogs have lost was actually from like humans either selecting against it or just kind of not selecting for it. Whereas in the wild, it could have been different. And there's still a little bit of debate whether dogs evolved from like the gray wolf as we know now, or whether they show a common ancestor. So you could have lupus or Canis lupus familiaris or Canis familiaris, depending on who you ask. So even like the evolutionary history between wolves and dogs is, I don't want to say like hotly debated, but it's not like completely fleshed out. But
I can imagine academics at a bar after a conference having that conversation after some shots.
Oh my God. I just want to like listen and then
I know, right?
I never would have even gone there.
So when you were doing the research, the fairness research, right, between the wolves and the dogs, what did you find out?
Yeah. So the kind of background for dogs was that it had been done, well, go even further. So it had been done in primates. So Capuchin monkeys, chimpanzees, all the ones you can think of, human studied primates, because they're genetically related to us and we like ourselves. So primates show inequity aversion or a sense of fairness like people. So if I'm getting $1 and you're getting $5, that makes me mad. And in the video with the Capuchin monkey throwing back the cucumber, that's a cost, right? I'm giving something up to express how mad I am about it. That's a calorie loss for me, even though cucumbers aren't like.
But the monkey thought it was, he wanted a grape.
Yeah. In dogs, this was done with giving paw, right? And so compare things like if I'm getting kibble and you're getting sausage, if I'm getting kibble and you're getting kibble, or if I'm getting nothing and you're getting kibble. So all these kind of interactions. And in monkeys or primates in general, they did find this quality inequity, as we call it. So this difference between I get cucumber and you get grape.
Mm-hmm.
Dogs, as long as I got something, it was fine if you got something better. So if I'm getting kibble and you're getting sausage, that's fine.
So they didn't have like understanding of better.
Good to know.
Always had a like presence absence. So I'm not going to free when you're getting something, but I'm going to work for kibble if you're getting something better. So there was kind of this difference between that.
Did you get into like quantities, like a little bit versus a lot?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
And I'm actually not totally sure. I would have to look at the research of if that's been done since. The hard part with studying dogs, even dogs at the place that I worked at where they weren't living with humans, is they have this like bitability and this interest in pleasing humans that doesn't exist. Even if you do like raise wolves, they don't get this. They don't get the same level.
Wolves really don't care what we think.
Yeah. And so when we repeated this with the pack living wolves and dogs, we saw the same thing in the dogs there that we saw in pet dogs, right? As long as I'm getting something, that's fine. But the wolves were more like primates in that, yes, I'm really mad if you get something and I get nothing, but I'm also still not happy when I get kibble and you get a chick or raw meat or whatever we were using that pair. So there was like a difference between those, between the wolves and dogs. They did both show inequity aversion, but the quality inequity aversion was only in the wolves.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have any hypothesis why that is?
Yeah.
Again, I think it really, you could never get away from, are the dogs just okay with working for humans, right? So they have this like idea that they're okay working for less, or are they just not paying attention? And that's one of those things where, Robin, you and I were talking about these cognition behavior studies where you cannot always be sure that the animal like is learning what you think they're learning or remembering what you can't ask them. And so, in the study, we hold up the food, here's the kibble, you're getting kibble, here's the sausage, your friend's getting sausage. And so we did our best. All the food is in front of us. But I personally think it mostly goes down to that they're still getting some benefit for themselves of like for thinking they're pleasing a human, basically.
Yeah.
That wolves certainly do not have. And we used the wolves trainers. So we didn't have like a random person. So we had like the most likely person that they would have wanted to please if they did want to please. And they still were like, no. If you're getting I don't want kibble.
Wow. Well, I have to say, I feel a lot better about breaking cookies in half now.
Yeah.
Because we all do that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, 2 cookies.
2 cookies. You're getting a full cookie, you're getting a half a cookie. I just don't know the difference. Awesome.
So
yeah.
So I'm going down this because I was working with Raven today at Baumgar's. I'm doing detection work with her, and she's brilliant. But it was interesting for me. I talk a lot about reinforcement hierarchy, right? Will the dog do more? And I might be answering my own question. If I'm paying more, will the dog do more? So that's actually behavior economics, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's nodding, everybody. So I'm right. Woo-hoo!
Yeah. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, that sounds good.
But that's different, right? Because that's just looking at that dog's preferences, not another like social pressure component of another dog present
right
with your interactions. And, the other issue we have with these studies is that if a dog isn't food motivated, we can't use them for the study.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
So you're already biasing your sample towards relatively food motivated dogs.
Well, and they could all be a little different anyway, right? I mean,
Nico doesn't like cheddar cheese. He'd work for mozzarella, but not cheddar.
Yeah. So we did that. We did food preference tests, which is why I said some of the wolves got baby chicks and some got meat, but they would still need to be able and willing to eat in exchange for doing this task. Right. And so you're already kind of self-selecting for animals that have higher levels of food motivation, which might also cause them to be more tolerant of lower quality food because they're more interested in it. And this is always the issue with studies on really any animal you're talking about, right? You have to have an animal that's willing to, if it requires it, work with a human or work next to another animal. I'll tell you, when I was doing Inequity, Aversion, and other cooperative studies with the Capuchin monkeys, it was really hard to get like lower ranking monkeys to take food when a higher ranking monkey was around.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
Right. But I want to test all the monkeys. I don't want to just look at the behavior of like one type of monkey, right?
Oh.
And so I think you get the same thing with dogs, right? I can't work for dogs to come into these tasks that are highly aggressive.
Yeah.
It's not right. And so you're constantly kind of cutting out sometimes very large populations of dogs and makes it, I think, hard to extrapolate some of these things to like dogs at large if you're not considering that fact that there's a certain kind of prerequisite in some of these studies that think it affects the result, but you also don't really know because you can't go test those other dogs, right?
My brain goes to Labradors and their food drive, right? Where, you start thinking like they will turn themselves inside out for that one piece of kibble.
Yep.
And how do you make your study equitable when you have Nico who says cheddar cheese only,
yes,
versus, my God, it's a piece of kibble, right? So you have like, and then is the Labrador actually paying attention to anything more than just that like narrowed focus on that one piece of kibble?
Right. And that's the issue, right? Too, that if they're so highly motivated for food, they might not even at all be paying attention to what their partner's getting. And you're not even really then assessing an equity aversion because if they're not like cognizant of what's going on, they can't also be ignoring it, right? Like they don't know it.
Like tunnel vision.
Exactly. Those are things that are very difficult where in humans, you could like talk them through it. You could ask them lots of different things you can do where in animals, it's very difficult. And, unfortunately that sometimes leads to us like extrapolating these results much larger than we should, but it's very tough tough. I mean, like I said, it goes back to even what we're doing at Penn with like the working dogs, like you're working with like a very specific population. Even if you're not working with like the literal same population, you're working with dogs that have kind of like a very similar phenotype that.
Well, they've been bred for a certain way. And I mean, all of this, it's not like going to the local shelter.
No. And you're not at dogs. You're looking at like these very specific dogs.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
They're pre-selected. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So for the inequity aversion studies, we would have some prerequisite, like, will you give the paw 10 times in a row for this food? Right. But that's sometimes you do the best you can, but that's not perfect. That doesn't mean I know the dog is paying attention to the other dog. One of the conditions we do is we did it with the wolves as well, where we asked them to give paw, we gave them nothing, and then we kind of faked giving food to like the kennel next to them with the dog. They give like here's the sausage, and then just put it back. So they did see the presentation of the food without a partner present.
Uh-huh.
We also looked at like how long will they give the paw for free when there's no one next to them getting anything. And again, the dogs will do it for longer because they probably get some benefit of working for humans that wolves don't get, primates don't get. But again, like that doesn't necessarily mean they really understood that their partner or knew that their partner was getting something else. I don't want to say you can never really know, but we're always finding new controls to add in to try and get closer and closer to knowing some of these things, which is why like science is always like iterative, right? There's no like this proves this, just this is what this study says. And in 5 years, I might be teaching something else in class. But, when I talk to my students, I compare it like, if I asked you to do this task and I gave you $10 and you were happy with it, and you never found out that your partner is getting $20 for the same task, you would still be happy with that 10. But then as soon as you find out that they're getting that 20, suddenly that 10 is not great. But if you never knew, then you can't, you wouldn't show any inequity aversion to it. So there's always that question of, are they really understanding the whole context we're presenting to them?
Yeah, fascinating.
It's like employers, they don't want you to share your salary, right? Because when you share it, then that's when you can start comparing things. If you don't know, then you can't.
Yep.
Then you're discussing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everybody, we're going to hit pause right there and let you think about all of those things. So please put in the comments or send us a note on what you're thinking about, your takeaways for what we did with Dr. Essler. Next time, we're going to have the remainder of her interview, and we have a little sighting announcement at the end. So make sure you tune in. Go train.
Canine Detection Collaborative.